Hello, thank you for clicking on this video from Checkmate Humanity. Please like, subscribe, hit the notification bell so you can tell the algorithm that you want to keep getting videos from me, if you do. So I want to address a lot of questions that have come up since Amber Heard did her interview with NBC. There's a lot of questions on YouTube and in general in the public about, was that a good idea for her? Should she have been able to been given that platform after such a drubbing by the court? And what was NBC's role in that? Did they pay her? If they did pay her, how much? And should they have edited parts out of the video that already aired? There are some videos about that. And was Savannah Guthrie too soft on her? Now, I'm going to be using my personal background and experience to make this analysis, just reminding you that I'm not a lawyer. So I don't know any of the legal analysis. What I can give you is the media relations analysis or the media strategy analysis. And because I worked with the media for I still work with the media, and I've been working with the media for a very long time. And a lot of that was on behalf of high profile tech clients, basically. So I've personally never been involved in negotiating a payment for an interview, and we'll get into that in a minute. But 4 out of the 6 years that I worked at Apple, it was my job to manage all of Steve Jobs' media. So I took in every single request that came in asking to interview him. I responded to them, yes or no. Or if we were making some big announcement and we were deciding who we wanted to talk to first, whether we would give an exclusive, it was my job to come up with that plan. So that's where I'm coming from in this. So I'm going to analyze it from that perspective. But first, before I get into all of that, I want to address some comments that came up in my comment section in both of my channels. I've done 2 videos that have gotten, a good number of views so far on this situation. One is on this channel, the other is on my other channel, Trauma and True Crime. And a lot of the same questions came up. A good portion of those address the same thing, and I want to make sure that I address those as well. So a lot of people are saying, don't give Amber more attention. I'm sick of her. She doesn't deserve more attention. And I just want to be clear. I'm not here to give Amber attention. I'm here to make her an example, because it's fairly rare for us to have such a globally obvious example of a very, very toxic, abusive relationship played out on the stage like it has, where you get to see all of the elements of it, her explanation, his explanation, and then see the kind of personalities at work in it. And so I want to make an example of it because I think there's a lot to learn about abusive relationships in that scenario. The other thing that came up a lot was that in the last video on this channel, Amber in her interview talked about the signs that said "Death to Amber" and "Burn the Witch," and a lot of people have come out, and I've seen this on YouTube as well, where they say, you know what, I was there every day and there were no such signs. And it's true. If the media, if those signs had been there, the media would have caught it, other people would have caught it, Amber would have had pictures. So this is, to me, another example of Amber just probably bald-faced lying to manipulate us into feeling sorry for her. And she's using one of the most powerful institutions to do that, and that's the media. And that's one of the big problems I have with her entire situation, is how she has just taken several institutions and manipulated them because she has access to be able to manipulate them. And her access is because of her privilege and her celebrity and her connection to one of the most celebrated actors of our time. So that bothers me a lot. Now, the other thing that came up a lot is that Savannah asked Amber about total global humiliation and that text. And I had said in one of my videos that gave me some pause too, and it did, rightfully so. When you're looking at a case like this, you have to look at the actions of both people and how they fed into the situation. And a lot of people have pointed out to me, and I agree with this, that what he was basically saying is, if you move forward with this case, it's going to end in total global humiliation for you, because I know the facts. I know that you're wrong and I'm right about this. So, hey, knock yourself out. I'm putting words in his mouth now, but knock yourself out, because that's how it's going to end for you. So he wasn't making a promise or a threat. He was basically stating the truth. And look at where we are now. We have now concluded a 6-week trial. She did not perform well in any stretch of the imagination. The 7 people found her to be malicious and untruthful and not credible, or just at least not as credible as Johnny. And so now she's trying to do this NBC comeback interview where she relitigates everything, and that appears to have failed as well. As I said in my last video here, it was a bad idea. It was a really bad idea. You can't continue to just cycle through the institutions and hope that one of them is going to find you right. Especially when you've taken it really to the highest institution. So we know she's appealing. We'll see how that goes. But I honestly think it's just another abuse of the system and another way of, sending us all through cycles for her public image. So those are my responses to some of the comments that came up. Keep those comments coming. I just want to say I compliment everybody, because you're all so very, very smart, and you bring up things that I might have missed or I might not have completely thought through, and I really value that. So thank you for keeping everything honest. That's one of the benefits of social media and kind of crowdsourcing information. So let's get back to, did NBC screw up by giving this platform to Amber Heard? And the first question I'm kind of posing to myself for the purposes of this video is, should NBC have given Amber a platform after a strong drubbing by the jury? Let's just be honest with ourselves, okay? The media is a business. Their business is based on their content. They sell content to advertisers on the belief that they're going to be able to get better content than the other channels. And after seeing a 6-week trial which had such, salacious information and a verdict, honestly, it would be, and I'm not defending the media here, I'm explaining the media's rationale on this. It would almost be irresponsible for them to try to get one of those people on their channel and offer an exclusive interview. And I would be very confident that Johnny has also been offered the same exclusive interview status from probably every media organization in the world. So that's their business. Their business is getting exclusive content that people are going to watch. Now, here's what I do have a problem with, is making a week's worth of content out of it. An entire week. They aired things all week long. They milked this thing. And I'm not a lawyer, so I can't say whether they have participated in possibly more defamatory action. But what they did was they even put forth Amber's therapist notes from her therapy sessions. And that gets us into, did NBC pay her? And if they did, how much? All right, let me try to answer this question for you. First, by saying that media organizations, legitimate media organizations, have an ethical obligation not to pay any interview subject. So I personally have never been involved in negotiating for a payment for an interview. However, I do know that it happens all the time. It still happens, and here's how they do it. They figure out a way to pay the person without it being for the interview. So for instance, you remember when Angelina and Brad had their first baby? And I don't remember how much it was, but they paid, the People magazine paid something like $2 million for the exclusive rights to the first photo of that baby. So that was them licensing the copyright for the photo, is my understanding, not for, an interview with Angelina and Brad, because it was their photo that People was licensing. It was not a photo that People went and took. If People went and took the photo, they would own the license and there would be no money exchanged. But whoever had the license for that photo was probably paid, and that's how celebrities and other high-profile figures get paid for their interviews. Now, there are some media outlets that don't even try to go through that loophole process, and they will just go ahead and say, hey, if they're trying to compete for the exclusive rights to an interview with someone, they'll just say, boom, what will it take? But and you can probably tell which types of organizations those are. But at the national network level, they're not supposed to do that. Do I think that Amber got paid for this? I do. I don't know for sure, but I think she got paid for this. And I think possibly one of the vehicles for doing that was by her providing them copyright images of the notes from her therapy sessions. Now, again, you guys are all really, really, really smart. So and you might have seen something that I didn't see that addressed this issue very specifically and talked about it. So feel free to let me know in the comments if you know differently, but that's my take on the situation. And I think if she was paid handsomely, because this was a trial that was held on a global scale. People were still thinking about, talking about. The verdict was a little bit shocking, and people wanted to see how she would react. Now, the next question on this front is, should they have edited out parts of the video that already aired? So, and here's what I mean by this. I'm going to show a clip from another YouTube creator who pointed out, and a few creators have done this, but I'm going to show this one example because it's very clear and concise. That when the first media interview aired, there was a section of the interview where she made a statement that didn't really make her look very good. And when they aired it again on the Dateline special, that appeared to have been edited out.
So you're going to see the audio right here syncs up perfectly. Have a listen.
Have the resources that, say, you or I do, with the luxury of saying, hey, this is black and white, because it's anything but when you're living in it.
Was that tomfoolery? Was that Amber's team, forcing them to take that out? Why would they do that? Well, let me try to give you some insight into how that kind of thing works. When I was at Apple, there was a great deal of competition for Steve Jobs interviews, okay? And what that meant is, they couldn't offer money. They weren't going to offer money to him because in business, I've never known a case where there was a business person who was running a business getting paid. That would be unethical on both sides, okay? So there's no payment to be made. They have to set themselves up for the better chance that they're the ones that are going to be getting the interviews. And one of the ways they do that is by establishing a relationship and a rapport with that high profile figure. And once they get that access to that high profile figure, they don't want to let go of that access. And Steve Jobs was one of those people. Like, he was one that would, if you said something that he didn't like in an article, first he would try to get that article killed. Then he would try to get the thing in the article changed that was said about him that he didn't like. And that was my job. My job was to either try to kill the story in some way or to try to get them to take out that part or change that part. Well, that is a very difficult negotiation, because if the press thinks that what they're saying is accurate, they're not going to want to change it. They want to keep it in there. However, they do still want that access. And Steve Jobs was famous for cutting off entire news organizations if they didn't cooperate with, something that he wanted, or if they, basically wrote a story that he didn't like. There was one magazine that he had completely banned off of his list. Like, do not even say the word of that magazine to him, or he would be like, you don't know me very well, do you? Right? So in the situation with Amber Heard, it's very possible that either her lawyers went back to them and said, what you aired was out of context. It didn't accurately reflect what she was saying. Your editing is misleading, and we don't think it should be in there anymore. And, if the lawyers or her publicist or whatever are able to convince NBC that they were being inaccurate or out of context or misleading, then they'll consider making that change. Now, another thing they might do is then threaten that there will be no more access to that person ever again if they don't edit that part out, if they don't change that. And then it's really up to the corporate brass to decide, do we care? Do we care about whether or not we want access to this person anymore? So there's all those considerations into place. And again, I'm not defending the way the media handles this, but I'm just explaining those are the negotiations that take place between high profile figures, their publicists and their lawyers and things like that. The other thing that I've seen a lot of people talk about is whether Savannah Guthrie was too soft on her. And honestly, I personally thought that Savannah Guthrie did a pretty good job. She challenged her, a number of times. Whenever it seemed like Amber was trying to gaslight or sidestep, Savannah called her out on it, basically saying, but the jury said that you're lying. However, I do think that it could have been tougher. It could have been a tougher interview. And that once again is like part of the calculation that they make in the process of these interviews is, are we going to create a situation where we're never going to be able to interview this person again? And they also have to make sure that they're not pushing too hard on one side of the narrative to make it seem like they're contributing to her continued defamation of the case, right? Or did they treat her unfairly? So they have to appear as balanced as possible. They have to appear to be giving as much of both sides of the story as possible. And the only way to do that in an exclusive interview like this is with, Savannah Guthrie pushing back and showing that there's another side to the argument. But do I think that could have been done more? Yes. Do I think that she did a reasonably good job, though? Yes. Do I think that maybe there were more times that we didn't see in the interview? Because I'm sure that interview took place over a lot longer time than we're seeing on, in all of these packages. Do I think that maybe she pushed back more and they just didn't air all of the pushback? Yeah, because they don't want... Reporters are also supposed to not be part of the story. And then if Savannah just keeps arguing with her, then Savannah becomes part of the story, and it doesn't allow, that information to come in. Now, and my final point is that I'm kind of disappointed that more people have not picked up on this right here.
I shouldn't have to have donated it in an effort to be believed.
That to me was shocking. It was absolutely shocking that this woman was sitting on national TV basically saying, I made that pledge to give me credibility, to make me more believable. That's her telling on herself. And that's another reason for these media properties to give a voice to people, is because there are people like Amber who in these situations, especially when they're out of court, they tell on themselves. That was her telling on herself in a major, major way. And that's an area where I thought Savannah could have dug a little bit deeper and asked her, wait a minute, what was your real intention for giving that pledge and not donation? And to me, and I have to say, I didn't watch Emily D. Baker's reaction to that until after I did my video, where I'm like, oh my God. And I love how Emily D. Baker reacts to certain things, and especially when it aligns with what I'm saying. Let me just quickly show you her reaction to that same thing.
I shouldn't have to have donated it in an effort to be believed. I shouldn't have had to earmark the entirety of that in order to have...
You shouldn't have, but when...
Wait. What? She said, I never wanted anything. And here she's saying that she donated it to be believed. I think that is so far the biggest thing that's come out of this interview.
I agree with Emily there. It should have been a bigger story. That should have been the headline. That should have been... That's where we need to drag her through the mud, because that was such a big part. And even the jury member that came out and talked about, why they made the decisions they made, her, pledge versus donation thing, and the fact that, out of the $7 million that she pledged, something like $350,000 have been paid out. Correct me if I'm wrong. I'm not totally clear on that. But the point being that she was clearly using that as a device to make her look a certain way. It's called virtue signaling in the personality disorder world. She was clearly virtue signaling, and even has the gall to come out and say that without knowing that so that was her telling on herself. So all this to say that, once again, as I've said on both of my channels, this is a human being who is very troubled, who has a grandiose sense of her own entitlement and ability to fool people, and she clearly thinks that she's above everybody else, and so she thinks it's okay to even say that the reason that she was giving that pledge was to clear her name. I think that just says it all, that she's used, once again, she's manipulating institutions, that she got the ACLU and the Children's Hospital involved in her personal vendetta against her ex-husband, who was accusing her of abuse, and it ends up being true. So that's all I have to say with that. I hope you have had a great weekend. I hope all the fathers out there had a great Father's Day. And until next time, please remember that you don't know what is going on in the personal lives of other people. So please be as kind as possible. Peace out.